I'm Jackie Doucette, and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9 to 5. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today, I've got Laura Barker joining me. After 20 years of working in HR, Laura recently transitioned to full-time work as a career coach. She's worked in multiple industries of different sizes and scopes, and now she coaches people who are seeking meaningful work aligned with their values. Thanks for joining me today, Laura.
Oh, thanks, Jackie. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, as I always do, let's start with a little bit about you. I said you used to work in HR and now you're a career coach. What drove you to that change in career path?
It took a while to figure out. I loved HR. I loved the people aspect of HR. But what I found over time is that my day-to-day was less about people and more about administration.
Yep.
It was not a quick thing. It was a gradual thing. And I realized that it didn't satisfy me, but I didn't know what else was out there. So I tried project management because I remember I loved doing projects in my jobs because I felt I was growing, expanding. But when I did it every day, that was not it. So I had a few people say to me, Laura, I think you'd be a great coach. And the first time I heard it, I dismissed it, I'll be honest. But when I heard it a couple other times, I thought, okay, there's something here. The universe is sending me a message. So what I did was I quit that project management job. I enrolled in my coaching courses and I took another HR job. And I told them at the outset, this is my final HR job. I'm letting you know I will become a coach in a couple of years. And here I am now. A few years have passed and I've done the transition.
Oh, that's wonderful. And now you're happy, obviously.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to, I know it's scary to be on my own, but at the same time, it's so empowering.
Yeah, nobody telling you what to do except you.
Yeah, I create my own path. Yeah.
That's it, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned in the intro that you help people find meaningful work aligned with their values. Yeah. So in my point of view, meaningful work means something that has a purpose, something that,
yes,
that we get some kind of result out of, either external or internal result. Mm-hmm. Going into retirement, I've had a lot of people say to me, I can't retire because then I've got nothing. I have no purpose.
Yeah.
So how do you help people get over that? Because I know people at any stage in life can be looking for purpose, but I think it especially is pertinent to people who are heading into retirement.
Oh, completely. It's a transition time. It's a time of change. And that's when these things tend to bubble up. But I totally agree with you. And I think that identifying values. So what we end up doing is we focus so much on what to do. What am I going to do? But that's the output of the discussion of who am I? And who am I is all about identifying what my values are. And what I mean by that, it's not your morals, the things you learn from church, etc. It's not about ethics, meaning the rules of your profession, but it's about what are the things that are important to you. So when we do the work around values, what we're looking at is we do different exercises to pull out people's values, because what tends to happen is if I were doing this with you, Jackie, you may be so close to it. You can't see even what your own values are, but they come out in the stories through words and phrases. And through that, we develop like a value chain, etc. We develop what your values are. And then with that, figuring out what to do in retirement or at any other transition is so much easier because all you need to do is align with your values and you're going to feel good.
So, excuse me. You say your values aren't your morals or the things that you believe that you've been taught, your ethics. That's interesting. I've always thought that the things that I value are the things that, well, they're the things that are important to me, but those would be the things that drive the way that I act and the way that I conduct myself through my day-to-day life. So I'm thinking, my themes for this season were or are planning, freedom, confidence, generosity. I would say that those are my values. Those are the things that are important to me. Primarily, probably freedom. Now that I'm looking at retirement and trying to gauge what's going to happen afterwards. But I think for a lot of people, confidence and generosity are maybe more important. And I don't know whether those would be considered values for people or just, I don't know, ideals to aim for. What do you think?
So I think I hear what you're saying about the confusion there. And I think what I mean by that is morals are externally driven. So I was raised Catholic, and as a little girl going to Catholic school and Catholic church, I was told all these things about being kind and being generous. I may or may not value that internally.
Okay.
I would say most people would value kindness and generosity. I would agree. But on a scale, I actually, kindness is one of my top values, but it may not be a top value for somebody else. So it's a question of orientation is what I'm getting at. Externally driven versus internally driven.
Okay. So then in going back to the themes, in your little intro that you sent to me, you talked about focusing on generosity and how that affects people. Can you talk a little bit about how that might play into life after retirement?
Yeah, well, retirement is such a wonderful stage of life. And I know it's scary. And this is why you're doing what you're doing. Because I think too often the discussion just becomes narrowly focused on financial well-being. Do I have enough to retire? And that is like this much of what the retirement discussion should be about. There's so much more. And so in terms of generosity, retirement is a wonderful time to look at what are my interests? And once I know what my values are, what are the things I want to do to give back? Because generosity, I think for many is expressed as helping or giving back either through time, money, resources.
Right. And going back then a little bit to the coaching that you do, you say you help people figure out what their values are. How do you do that? Like you talked about it coming through in stories. Do you just ask people to tell you about their life? What do you do?
Yeah. So that is too broad a question. When we ask people to tell them about their lives, it's too broad. People get overwhelmed by that. Yeah. But a different way to approach it would be to say something like, think about a peak experience. What were you doing? Where were you? How did you feel? And you bring up that moment, and through that as an example, you can pull values from there.
Okay. So if someone comes to you and they're looking for some guidance, they have an idea about what they want to do after they retire, how can you help them kind of go down the right path?
Well, if they already know what they want to do, then really this is a discussion about execution. Okay. Typically if people are coming to me or coming to a coach, it's because they're not quite sure, is this really what I'm meant to do? And one of the things we can do in those discussions is we look at resonance versus dissonance. How do you feel? Are you aligned with your values? When you feel aligned, you feel resonant in that choice that you've made. So for people who aren't familiar with resonance and dissonance, being resonant with something means that you're happy about the way things are going. You're comfortable in your life. Is that right? Good? It's that simple. I feel good. And when I say feel good, I'm not just talking here. I'm talking, you feel it in your body. I feel good. Or when I feel dissonant, I'm uncomfortable. See the shoulders go up. I feel unhappy, or that's dissonance. So can you tell us a little bit about one of your clients, someone who has come to you and had no idea what they were doing and how they progressed through your program? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've talked to people at different ages and stages of their lives. I actually at this point, I don't know that it's reflective of being a certain age, which I might have thought a couple of years ago. So retirement is an inflection point. Women coming back to the workforce after being off for a few years to raise their kids, another inflection point. Others, an example would be who are just burnt out 2 years after of this pandemic, and they've just been burning the candle at both ends, and they can't continue. They can't continue in this vein. So they need to it's like they need to regroup and figure out, who am I? What are my priorities? So through that, one of the other things that I deal with is time management comes up a lot. And within that bucket of time management, there's issues around establishing boundaries, setting priorities, and using time effectively.
So that's interesting. Setting boundaries, setting schedules, that sort of thing. It's not something that we generally associate with being retired, because generally speaking, the idea is now you've got lots of time. You don't have to set a schedule or have a limit to what you're doing and when you're doing. But I don't think that's right. I think we still need to have boundaries.
Oh, completely. And the mammalian brain is 95% habit. So whether you're retired or you're working full time, we rely on these habits of behavior, of life to get through our day to day. We want structure. We actually crave it. That structure may look different when we're retired than when we're working full time, but we need that structure. It gives us safety. There's safety within parameters.
So how do you help someone if they've come to you and let's say I've just retired. I've walked away from my 40 some year career, and I've decided I don't want to do anything anymore. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I don't want any constraints on my time, but now I'm feeling lost. So how do you help me? What do you do for me? I know that's very broad.
So that it comes back to, no, I know, but it comes back to, okay, sometimes it's easier to start with, what do I not want? I don't want rules. I don't want a boss. I don't want this. And just writing that all out, getting it out of your system, what you don't want. Because through that action, it's like a mirror. You start to see on the other side of that mirror, what do I want? Okay, I don't want a boss. Well, what does that look like then? What does that mean? So that's one thing that we would do. Another would be about, again, values. Going back to identifying values, because I mean, Jackie, you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't take that time for introspection to know who they are. And so using retirement as an example, they come to retirement and they feel lost. Why are they lost? Because they don't know who they are. So it's a process. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's something that I've said a lot of times, is you got to take the time to think about what you want and who you want to be. Yes. And sometimes when I have found, when I've used the phrase like that, it stresses people. So what I find sometimes helps people is to say, you don't have to be someone else. We're uncovering who you are. And that's a feeling like, okay, I don't need to pretend to be something or someone else. Okay, we're just uncovering. That's interesting. I can see that could be exciting, I guess, trying to figure out, who you really are, because you've been somebody for other people for so many years. You've been playing a role in whatever you're doing, and now it's time to step aside, put down the act and be who you really are. And I think that could be very uplifting for people.
Yeah. And also the other aspect to this is we live in a society that values what we do. We are defined by what we do. And so the reward for introspection, the reward for looking inward and defining values isn't necessarily there from the external world. You're not rewarded for it.
No, that's true. And that's something that reminds me, when you meet someone new, they always or almost always say, so what do you do? And you reply with, I'm a lawyer, I'm a plumber, I'm a teacher. And that causes a big problem for people who are retired.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, well, I used to be, but that doesn't say who you are. And it's a different kind of mentality. You've got to say, who am I, not what do I do?
Yes, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's almost like we need to create a script to help people to navigate that. I just happened to me last night. I met a couple of people, and sure enough, just like you said, so what do you do? Going around the table. And I remember a few weeks ago, a woman who was recently retired, it came around and she said, she was struggling because she said, I used to be blah, blah, blah. And you could sense the loss of not being defined in that way anymore.
And that's something that in my mind puts a real negative twist on being retired. And I think what I'm trying to do, is make it a positive thing, because it's not the end. And people keep looking at it in terms of what they've lost. Even if it's positive things, it's like no more boss, no more schedules, no more whatever. Those are all negatives. And I think maybe it's time to start thinking about the positive things. Instead of saying, I used to be a teacher, it's now I'm a lifelong learner, or, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's something different. And it's going to be hard for people to do that, I think.
Yes. And what you're really talking about is reframing this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at retirement in a different light. And eventually, I hope our society moves to a place where we're not just defined by what we do, but we're not there yet. So we need to start that conversation by helping people know that I define myself by who I am, not by what I do.
Yeah. And that, I guess you could say that without being or coming across as rude to someone when they say, so what do you do? It's like, well, it's not a matter of what I do anymore, so much as who I am.
That's perfect. See, you came up with a script right there on the spot of how you can respond to that situation.
Yeah. I do lots of things because now I'm free.
Yeah. Yes. And there's something about that particular word, which is so tied to retirement, freedom.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. I do the same thing. I thought of retirement as freedom because I was tired of, being told when to get up in the morning and what I had to do every day. And, that maybe I'm going to do the same things every day, but now it's my choice to get out of bed.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. Agency.
Yes, exactly. So, what kind of advice do you have or would you have for people who are retiring? I think we've gone through it all, but people who are retiring and they're ready to make a change, how would you suggest that they start?
I would suggest they start with, who am I? And then move on to, what do I want? What do I do?
So do you, I guess, inner reflection, journaling perhaps would be a good way of doing that.
Yeah.
Although that seems to be a phrase or an action that people are a little bit hesitant to start with if they haven't done it before, the idea of what journaling really is.
Yeah. Journaling is so helpful because it actually is a way to get it out of your head and onto the page. It's a release by getting it onto a piece of paper, particularly when you're handwriting. There's something about the action of the handwriting. I think some people get nervous about it. I wonder if some people get nervous about it because they think, oh, I'm not a good writer. It's work. It doesn't come easily to me. But no one needs to see it. And you can unburden yourself, for example, through journaling in a way you might not want to tell your best friend. You just might want to write something down and get it out without telling somebody about it. So I think journaling is a wonderful tool. Mornings is a great time to do it at the start of the day, just to set your intentions, etc. I think that's a great idea. Of course, there's also talking to friends. Because in the end, we're social animals and we all need each other. And so talking to friends who are going through something similar is so helpful. Or even just someone who can lend an ear to listen. There's not as many people in the world who are like that these days.
Yes,
So you want
exactly.
to, I want to recognize that.
Finding someone who is ready and willing to just listen and not try to fix your problem or offer solutions.
Yes.
It's so nice.
Yes. Sometimes you just want to vent and you don't need a solution. You just need to get it out of your system.
I guess, and saying that out loud, like you said, is important. Going back to the journaling for a second, because I think for me, it was a problem because I always worried about, am I doing it right? But I finally caught on that there isn't a right or a wrong. It's getting the ideas out of your head and down on the paper. So however you think about them, write them down exactly the same way. It just doesn't matter. And that's, I think, saying to someone, oh, do you keep a journal? Kind of scares a lot of people away because of what you said. I'm not a good writer. I don't think in coherent sentences. It's like, well, that's okay. Then write down the little thoughts, the little blurbs that come into your mind. It's just, it doesn't matter what it is.
There's you may know her, Jackie. Do you know Julia Cameron?
I've heard the name.
So she wrote a book. Now it's 30 years old. It's called The Artist's Way. And what it is, it's a journaling, and it's a 12-week program, and it's got prompts. Each chapter has a different theme. And so if someone is, I'm just putting it out there, if someone is interested in trying journaling, but is feeling a bit intimidated by it, her methodology is, she's a beautiful writer. She gives you great prompts. And I can say for myself, having done it, I experienced a lot of personal growth through it. So if you need a bit of structure to get going, that's one tool to maybe consider.
Awesome. I'll make sure that little line, Julia Cameron.
Yeah.
Goes into the
artist's
show
way.
notes. The artist's way. Okay. Thank you. And that leads me well into the next question that I was going to have. Do you have any resources or tools that you can offer people to help them figure out even, what their values are, what their, what's going on in their life?
Yeah. So I write a weekly blog, and this is something I talk about regularly. Just the other day, the one I wrote on the weekend was about that. I write them they publish on Sundays. The one this weekend was talking about lessons I learned from learning the Texas two-step. And there is something about dancing, and you realize that the roles of leader and follower both are necessary. It's not that one's more important than the other. And what you learn about yourself when you're in, we talked about this earlier today, alignment or resonance versus dissonance. When we're out of rhythm and we lose the rhythm, we lose the connection, we're dissonant. And when we're in keeping with each other and we're following each other's movements, we are aligned and there's resonance. And that is a visual metaphor for some of these concepts that we're talking about here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
So anyway, that would be an example I would bring up.
Ah, that's awesome. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They're welcome to look at my website, Laura Barker Coaching.
Okay, that's perfect. And I know when you booked the interview, you sent me a video about 5 ways that journaling makes you calm, that sort of thing. So I think I'm going to put that on the in the show notes, a link to that video as well, because I really like that. Thank you.
For me, journaling has been life-changing, and I would encourage anyone to just try it. Give it a few months and try it. I know it can sound scary, but it's a great tool for learning about yourself.
So before we close up, is there anything that you'd like the listeners to know about you, about your business, about life in general?
I think we've covered a lot, actually, in this short amount of time. So I feel we're in a good place.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Laura. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. I think the work you're doing is really important. And I'm so glad you're extending this discussion beyond just talking about the financial aspect of retirement.
Well, thanks.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca patreon.com/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.